Kyler's such a tricky case, guys. Like, there are certain quarterbacks in the NFL you look at and you say, he's obviously not the dude, or he's a bridge, or he is your long-term solution. And I don't feel like he falls into any of those categories, which I'm sure makes your jobs very difficult because you get these flashes of really high-end play, even in that game where you see him and he's got, top 5-10 arm talent in the NFL. And then you see lapses in decision-making at times, and it's hard to not ignore the second half issue and some of the worst performances that we saw down the stretch.
We're going to wrap up the new year with our favorite guest from 2024, Mina Kimes, of course, host of the Mina Kimes podcast featuring Lenny. You saw her on the great panel, the Netflix Christmas Day. It was unreal to see a guest of ours consistently throughout the year on full display, just dropping knowledge all Christmas Day. Mina Kimes joins us via the Verizon Insider Access. Of course, our Insider Access provided by Verizon. Visit a Verizon store, switch their award-winning 5G network, and get $200 gift card. Mina, how are you doing?
Well, I got to say, Seahawks fans are not too happy with you and the Arizona Cardinals right now, but I'm good. Otherwise, excited for the postseason's kind of rounding into shape. We're going to find out where NFL Live, my show at ESPN, is going to be on site, which wild card game. The one sort of benefit of the Rams getting in is we might get a Rams game, which would be a home game for me here in LA.
Yeah, we're not excited about the Rams. Honestly, we declared them dead. I declared them dead many times on this show. And it is disappointing. The Cardinals and Kyler Murray, Mina, are almost exclusively synonymous with second half collapses. Like the Cardinals 6-4 entering their bye. I think they had like a 65-70% chance to make the playoffs. Now we're sitting here and they're playing meaningless games in week 17 and week 18. Like, how do you spin it to this fan base, especially with K1, who was so promising early, and now you look at it and we're going into probably another off season of more questions than answers with K1.
Yeah, it's a real bummer because I also thought he played well in this last game, particularly in the second half. And you're thinking, okay, even if you're out, you're going to close on a high note. I thought Marvin Harrison Jr. was fantastic in that game. We can talk about that. And then you don't get the win at the end, and you got the miss. Kyler's such a tricky case, guys. Like, there are certain quarterbacks in the NFL you look at and you say, he's obviously not the dude, or he's a bridge, or he is your long-term solution. And I don't feel like he falls into any of those categories, which I'm sure makes your jobs very difficult because you get these flashes of really high-end play, even in that game where you see him and he's got, top 5-10 arm talent in the NFL. And then you see lapses in decision-making at times, and it's hard to not ignore the second half issue and some of the, worst performances that we saw down the stretch. And I wish I had a better answer for you. The truth is the Cardinals probably don't have good options outside of quarterback, so you don't have to make a difficult choice here. It's not like, a couple years ago when you were thinking, are the Cardinals tanking for the number 1 overall pick, or do we want to bring Kyler back? You're obviously not in position to get that pick. And even if you were, it's not a very good quarterback draft. So you got to kind of go into next season thinking, what can we do to continue building this defense? What can we do to add to this very lackluster pass rush? And is there anything that we can do to get more consistency from Kyler Murray, which to me is going to be about the quarterback himself?
Yeah, it really feels like the grass just is not greener on the other side, at least this offseason. When you look at even the free agent options that could be out there, it's like it's red flag central. I mean, they've just got as many, if not more, than K1 himself. And you started to kind of get into it a little bit. But realistically, what does the path forward with Kyler Murray look like, especially from 24 to 25?
I think next year has to be a decisive year for whether or not you're going to move on, right? You can try to bring in a little bit of competition for him this season. Again, I don't think there are many good options out there, either in free agency or the draft or a trade. I think you can just kind of continue focusing on team building next year. Because let's be honest, even if Kyler Murray played the entire year like he did during the stretch where he was playing really good football this year, I still don't think this defense was good enough. It was defense that was vastly improved and I thought played above its pay grade in some ways. And I think credit to Nick Rallis and the job he did, but you still got a lot of team building to do on that side of the ball. And you can focus on that this offseason next year, really make a decision with Kyler Murray, depending on whether or not he gives you consistent play from week 1 through the end of the season.
Meaning, you mentioned Marvin Harrison Jr. And again, like if only he could play the LA Rams every week, he'd be 1,500
right?
wide receiver in the NFL. But you see the accolades and the praise from Malik Neighbors, and rightfully so, and Brock Bowers and Ladd McConkey. But there's Marv, ho-hum, about 850 yards, 7 touchdowns. Like, what did you see specifically Saturday night, right? With the explosiveness out of his routes, he leads the NFL in crossing route production. Like, is that certainly something to build off of for MHJ?
I do not know why he was not used more on crossers throughout the entire season. This is like a constant complaint of mine. But what you saw, I thought, against the Rams, pardon me, was growth. Because that first season, the first game, as I recall, it was just like a few explosive plays. This to me felt like a really complete receiving performance. You saw a more developed route tree. You saw more nuance in his game. You talk about him getting in and out of his breaks, his work at the line of scrimmage, showing some of the hands and all the traits you saw in college. Honestly, like the receiver we saw in this last game in week 17 reminded me so much of the guy we saw in college, the way that he was winning, the types of throws that he was winning on. And I think that you have to be really encouraged by that as a Cardinals fan, because obviously him and McBride are going to be the centerpieces of this offense moving forward, and having like a true number one receiver, if he can continue building on that and really grow next year, that to me solves a lot of team building, any questions you have. And you can, again, I know I'm a broken record, focus on the defense.
The back shoulder throw to Marv was just beautiful. And it was a 50-50 ball, I think a lot of people would say, and Marv to kind of win that battle. It was very refreshing to see in a game that, didn't have as many implications as you wanted. Now, we talk about Marv and you're like, where was this? We look at the play caller, and, this is a show that, it has it pretty well sourced that Drew Petzing is trending on coming back, right? There's not going to be a move as far as the primary play caller goes. Where do you think Petzing can kind of take, what can he take from this season, and where can he grow to take this offense, which we thought was going to be the strength, but was probably the letdown for this team post-bye?
Yeah, I think you want to just continue working on the passing game in particular, because I think he's a brilliant run game designer, and I think you saw that pretty consistently. Although, can I get one more thing? Why doesn't Kyler Murray run more in these big games? I was in my Seahawks group chat watching this, and we were all like, run. It's 4th and short. You have one of the most dynamic rushing quarterbacks in football. So if I have a bone to pick with Drew Petzing, I do think he is underutilized as a design runner, and he should scramble more too. So I don't know how you guys feel about that, but that is something that bothers me. Otherwise, it's a very good run game. I think the pass game needs some work. You saw at times this year, it did feel a little bit predictable. I addressed the usage of Marvin Harrison Jr. was a little bit frustrating to me at times. And I think just continuing to build on that, maybe, like I said, you got a number one wide receiver, you got a bunch of really nice number twos, but I was thinking maybe if you add a little bit more speed, you can create some more space for Marvin Harrison Jr. to work underneath. But overall, I'm not surprised that they're bringing Petzing back. I think maybe we got a little bit over our skis thinking he was going to be a head coach immediately, but I wouldn't put him in that Bobby Slowick category where it's been like, whoa, this is, I think by and large, the quarterback himself is responsible for a lot of the ups and downs of the passing game.
Yeah, we feel like the offense has the talent, right? And just needs some minor tweaking and better play calling. Defensively, play calling coaching, Mina, as you mentioned, has been, A- to A+ at times this year, given the talent. Is it easy to just look at the Cardinal defense and say, go get a pass rusher, maybe go get 2 pass rushers? I'm a big advocate, and Bo laughs at me. Like, Hassan Reddick's going to be available. He had 17.5 sacks for Jonathan Gannon. Like, get creative.
What year is it, Johnny? What year are we talking about here? That was 2022.
Doesn't matter. The Jets are irrelevant. We don't take anything seriously with what took place in the Jets this year.
Yeah, I think because you guys got a decent amount of cap space, right? I haven't looked at.
It's like $100 million. They're behind only New England.
So yeah, I would defense, more defense. I think Rallis has done a really, really good job. I mean, the last second half of the season, really impressive from this group. And I think, you've seen development from young players, your Meltons of the world, and there are guys that have proven at minimum they are starters in the NFL. I don't know about plus starters looking at the defense, but the inability to get after the quarterback was really glaring, I think, in a lot of big games this year, and that's certainly where I focus.
Well, we'll end with this. What's the vibe for the Arizona Cardinals going into the offseason? How are they going to be viewed with all that cap space, with decent draft capital? And then off this season that they had, it's going to be sub 500, depending no matter how they finish this weekend. But what's the vibe for the Cardinals going into the offseason?
I think there's just going to be a lot of questioning of whether or not you build around Murray going forward and you continue to invest in him. I personally think it's a really complicated question. And I think, again, the availability of options is going to ultimately like why you don't try to make an aggressive move at the position this year. But I suspect that that's what I said earlier, which is kind of going to be put up or shut up time for him next season. I think that's probably going to be the prevailing sentiment. The national media is kind of like hard on him, honestly. He for whatever reason. So I wouldn't be surprised if he is under the spotlight, I suppose, going into next year.
Mina, it was the highlight of our season, bringing you on every other week. You made our audience smarter. Big fans of yours. Hope to chat with you at the Combine Super Bowl week, as we will be there. But subscribe to the Mina Kimes podcast featuring Lenny. Mina, thank you so much for the time this year.
I enjoyed it. My fellow NFC West losers.
Look at us.